Hello again, everyone. This is Steve Kallas, speaking of sports, along with Johnnie Kallas, Westchester County Post.com contributor. And we're here to talk about the NFL in general, big picture, both conferences. What do you think is going on? What do you think is happening? And we're going to start with the NFC. So, Johnny, I'll start it off. And I'm just going to go right to the number one seed. I'm going to read you the ESPN Football Power Index standings for the number one seed percentage wise. We could bat that around a little bit, and then a few other stories in the NFC. But right now, the Packers are 59% chance to get the number one seed. The Saints are second at 30. The Rams are third at 8%, and the Seahawks are fourth at 3%. And I think part of the Packers' 59% is the fact that they beat the Saints in week 3. And so obviously if they're tied at the end, I know you have some points on this, but when they're tied if they're tied at the end, the Packers will be the number one seed. But the other interesting thing to me, and this is, we talked early on about the Packers' kind of weak schedule. The Packers only have one win against a team over 500, and that was the Saints, and that was in week 3. So although I think Aaron Rodgers is a legit MVP candidate, if not in the lead for MVP candidate, again, if you go to before he got Devontae Adams back, he was throwing a lot of touchdown passes to nobody we ever heard of. So I still kind of like the Packers. I know you have some thoughts on it. I think the Rams and the Seahawks are just frankly too far behind. But I do kind of like the Packers to win for a number of reasons. But the number one reason, of course, is Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, Steve, great to be with you as always. I think the Packers are in line to get the number one seed. I think the Rams have a good chance of the Saints as getting, the number 2 seed because the Saints are playing the Chiefs this week. And while those games, the Chiefs have played in some very close games, I think any game that Patrick Mahomes is, you have to give the edge to the Chiefs nowadays. But in terms of the MVP race, I'm kind of on Team Rodgers now after Mahomes threw the 3 interceptions because Rodgers does as much with less. I won't say he does more with less, but he does as much with less. Mahomes is unbelievable. I think he is the best player in the world. But you have the fastest receiver, best receiver in football, best tight end in football, Sammy Watkins as a number 3. Aaron Rodgers, we've often talked about how Tom Brady does more with less. He has considerably more Super Bowl wins and appearances than Rodgers, but Rodgers has consistently done a lot with less over the course of his career as well. But in terms of the NFC race, I'm not a huge believer in the Packers because it seems like, as you kind of alluded to, anytime they play a good defense the past couple of years, or I should say a really good defense, except for the Saints, who they did beat earlier this season, they come up short. They got destroyed by the 49ers twice last year, once in the regular season, once in the NFC Championship game. They got beaten real bad by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who we could debate how good their defense is, but when they're playing at their best, they are, I'd say, as good as any defense, especially their front 7 in the league. So I have questions about the Packers playing really good football teams, especially in January. We've also seen how that's gone, not just the last couple of years for Green Bay, but throughout Rodgers' career. That being said, if they get to play at Lambeau, and you look at some of these teams, New Orleans, Los Angeles, Tampa Bay, these are teams that are in the South or in domes. So, it's not like Chicago's coming to play them or something. So that's something to look out for in Lambeau. It could be one of the few cold weather places in the NFC where you're going to see football this January. But I'm not a huge believer in the Packers. The other couple teams I just want to highlight right now, and maybe we can come back to a couple more after, the Los Angeles Rams. I think right now the Rams are playing like a championship football team as much as anybody in the NFC. The Saints are the question mark because Breeze has been hurt. But once again, even more so than the Packers, the Saints have found creative ways to lose playoff games over the past few years, both in Minneapolis and home in New Orleans, the Minneapolis Miracle, and then a couple of bad calls, but still had chances to win a couple of big playoff games that they just didn't at home in New Orleans, which is historically a very tough place to play. So Rams, you could say it's like the Rams of 2 years ago. I think their mentality is, though I think their defense has come along a lot better. Aaron Donald is still playing like the best defensive player in football. He should be an MVP candidate, even though he won't win. And Jalen Ramsey is a lockdown cornerback, and they got a lot of really good players. And I thought it was an interesting call to move Wade Phillips out like they did, but it's turned out to work out well for them. The Rams are playing incredible football. If Jared Goff can keep the turnovers down, this team can go far in the NFC. And I'd like to get to Tampa later after you talk a little bit, but I just want to quickly touch on Washington. You and I talked after Washington destroyed Dallas on Thanksgiving. I think we both agreed, or I think I might have said, I really think this team has a chance to win, a not so impressive division. Washington has a real good defense, and there is no quarterback. I was joking that the seed you want to have in the NFC, if you can't get to the number 1, you almost want to have the number 5 because you're playing an NFC East opponent in the first round. But I'll tell you what, if I'm an opposing quarterback, I do not want to go into Washington round 1 of the playoffs. I think you can win that game, but it's going to be, a 16-10, just brutal sort of game. Chase Young, I saw a piece on him. The Washington veterans are incredibly impressed with his leadership skills. There was some conflict with them taking him number 2 overall. He was the best player in the draft. He's performing and leading like it. And he's showing why they took him. And I like him to win the NFC East, and I like them to play a competitive first-round game, maybe even to win, depending on who they draw.
Well, I think those are all good points. I'll just mention a couple of things about the Rams early on this season. I couldn't tell if it was the Rams from last year who were terrible or the Rams from 2 years ago, who obviously went to the Super Bowl and lost to the Patriots. But now lately, they've been the Rams of 2 years ago. Interesting stat on Sean McVay. He's coached 34 games where the Rams have been ahead at halftime, and the Rams are 34-0 in those 34 games. Pretty incredible. Can't be an accident. Is just more. That's not a small sample. 34 wins at halftime, 34-0 on those. Getting to the NFC East, I will have to say, before the season, I said there would be a horrific division. After a couple or 3 games, when I think they had one win, that 40-39 Dallas victory over Atlanta when Atlanta gave them the game, that was their only win outside of their own division. I said they were the worst division in the history of football, but now I have to add a comma after that and limit it to the first half of the season, because you were the one. I didn't fall in love with Washington like you did, but you were the one who pointed out to me. And then in the strange world of the NFL, Alex Smith wound up being the quarterback, and frankly, I think that helped them a lot. Not because he's great, but A, he's an unbelievable story coming back from all those operations, that horrific leg injury. They didn't even know if he was going to live, never mind if he was going to play. B, he's kind of what he was before to me, a little more than a game manager. I think it's unfair to just say he's a game manager. Very intelligent, doesn't turn the ball over, a good leader, and you got to be motivated by what he did, just getting back to be the third string quarterback, to the second string quarterback, to the starter. Now this week, he had a calf injury last week. He came out of the game. Frankly, the defense won that game for Washington last week. But Ron Rivera, who deserves a lot of credit as well, even though 2019, all he had to do was kick an extra point with 30 seconds left in that first game of the year with the Giants, would have forced overtime, went for the win, didn't get it. Now, as you pointed out, Washington and the Giants, if they're tied, the Giants have the tiebreaker. But right now, as we're talking, Washington has the lead by 1 game over the Giants. The Giants have their own quarterback issues now. They're playing the Cardinals this weekend, the Ravens next week. They have to catch up to Washington, and Washington might get a loss, but I don't think they're going to lose 2 or 3. And so I think last week kind of put Washington over the top. So I agree with you right now. To me, and I'm not throwing out the Tampa Bay Bucks, because we know they can be up here, but we know they can also be down here. They haven't gotten that consistency I thought they would get after 12, 13, 14 games, frankly. They're not there yet. And so we'll have to see what happens. But I think you're right. Right now, the most complete team is the Los Angeles Rams in the NFC. Breeze has come off the injured list. I don't think he's going to play this weekend against the Chiefs. Kind of hard to come off. We're taping this on a Thursday. He came off yesterday, Wednesday. I think that's a problem. So I think in the NFC, I picked Tampa before. I kind of like them still, hopefully more. But again, right now, if you're looking for the best team in the NFC based on the last few weeks, I think you're right. I think it's the Los Angeles Rams. And if you're looking for the best team in the NFC East, I think you're right. I think it's the Washington Redskins, although I don't know if Alex Smith is playing. And again, not that he's great, but he's a calming influence. He's a leader. He motivates these guys. He's not going to turn the ball over. And you're really relying, like last week when he had to come out of the game, you're really relying on your defense to win those games. And as you pointed out, Washington has a great front seven, not a good front seven. And everybody's coming kind of late to the party. You to me a month ago was like ahead of everybody, certainly ahead of me. But I think that's true. And you don't want to play them. It's the old, you don't want to play that team in the playoffs. So any other thoughts on I will mention one more thing. Seattle, up and down, but Jamal Adams last week got a sack against Sam Darnold, his old quarterback, and he got 8.5 sacks for the year. That is the all-time record for a defensive back. Now, when I say all-time record, sacks was not an official stat until 1982. So not only do you miss any of the DBs, although I don't think they blitz like they do in the modern era, you also missed, those guys up front, the Purple People Eaters, Alan Page and those guys, Deacon Jones banging guys on the head, Coy Bacon, who supposedly had 26 sacks in the season. Because you could go back, if there's film of every game, you could figure out who had sacks. But give Jamal Adams credit, 8.5 sacks. He broke the record previously from Adrian Wilson of the Cardinals, who had 8 sacks, who broke Dave Duerson's record of the Nasty Bears in the mid-'80s with 7 sacks. So I just wanted to mention that because I think Seattle has a chance to do some good too, but their defense is going to have to get better. So give me your thoughts on the NFC, and then we'll move on to the AFC.
Yeah, Jamal Adams has a little bit of Rodney Harrison in him. I think that's a fair thing to say. I'm surprised Harrison's actually not on that list. But just a couple points. So Alex Smith, 3-time Pro Bowler. A lot of people don't realize that. Alex Smith was a Pro Bowler in Kansas City's offense when Patrick Mahomes was a rookie, which to me says as much about Andy Reid and the Chiefs' offensive weapons as it does about Alex Smith. We should contextualize that once again. Patrick Mahomes is the best player in the world. That's the offense he came into, an offense that made Alex Smith a Pro Bowler. So he's Alex Smith, when he took a snap, I think won comeback player of the year. He's, not a Pro Bowler anymore for a variety of reasons. Doesn't have the weapons either around him, but can still be a quarterback that I think can win a playoff game if it comes down to it. I'm not personally, I'll be honest, I'll put it out there. I thought they would put it together, and they're starting to a little bit. I'm not a huge believer in the Seahawks. I love Russell Wilson. I thought if you asked me after 5 weeks who the MVP was, I would have gone with him. He's turned the ball over a lot. They're actually a game to keep an eye on is Seahawks at Washington this week, both to see, Washington's defense against a really elite offense. Washington did beat Pittsburgh, not that Pittsburgh has an elite offense, but and also that could very well be a first-round playoff matchup. So that'll be interesting to watch. Just the last point I want to make on the Bucs. The thing about Tampa is even if they do now really put it together the next 3 weeks, they're playing the Falcons twice and the Lions. So we're not going to find out about Tampa until week 1 of the playoffs. And that's really where we're going to find out. For Bruce Arians to say we can do any blank thing we want, after beating the Vikings 26-14, Dan Bailey, who I just felt bad for, missed 10 points worth of kicks. That's just it's just not. I don't know what exactly he's. He takes a positive attitude when I think he should take a negative attitude, and he takes a negative attitude when I think he should take. I don't really understand what's going on. It does seem like him and Brady actually have a decent relationship, or Schefter's had a good relationship. We'll see how that plays out if they don't do anything this January. But I do agree with you. I think the Bucs still have the opportunity. I just think if you see them seemingly put it together the next 3 weeks, which if you're rooting for the Bucs, you should obviously hope for, we won't really know until they face good competition in January. So that'll be a lingering question. Though the NFC, I think we both agree the Rams look like the best team, completely wide open. And I think you can name 4 or 5 teams that could get to the NFC Championship game or Super Bowl, and you wouldn't be shocked. So those are my thoughts on the NFC.
Okay, final thought on Tampa Bay. I just want to give you a stat because I know you were the one who brought this up a few weeks ago. So Tampa Bay had the bye, And the knock on them was they didn't have many guys in motion. They
Yep.
didn't do much play action. And so I'm just going to give you the stat from last Sunday, their first game after the bye, versus their first 12 games. Um, Man in motion, first 12 games, 44% of the time. This past Sunday, 55% of the time. Play action pass, first 12 games, 18% of the time, which strikes me as very low. 27% of the time last week. And I think those numbers are frankly going to go up because I don't know why they were down, but you pointed it out and it made no sense. Maybe in Bruce Arians' mind, that was making the offense more simplistic so Brady could get used to it or something. I really don't know, but certainly you could see the difference last week. And I think you're right. We're not going to learn a lot about them the next 3 weeks, but I think they're going to be able to work on a lot of things. So they had the bye and now 4 weeks, hopefully, presumably, if you're rooting for the Bucks like I am, 4 wins. But yes, hopefully they'll get on that little roll. But you're right, they won't be tested till the playoffs. But, they got a guy named Brady and a guy named Gronk. They're going to have a lot of championships in that room. And I think they can lead the way and show the way for them to certainly make a run. I'll be surprised if they don't.
Just real quick, Gronk has never played on Wild Card Weekend. It's an incredible stat. He's never played on Wild Card Weekend. He has always had a bye. Brady hadn't played in Wild Card Weekend in over a decade until last year. We saw what happened. Tampa Bay's offense is a lot better than New England's it was last year. But Gronk has never played on Wild Card Weekend, which it actually shows the level of Patriot dominance. But that's just an incredible stat.
Well, yeah. That's for when you look at that 20-year period. It's just, I think you're right. Nobody's ever going to do that again. Certainly not in the salary cap era. So let's move over to the AFC. To me, it's a little easier now. The Steelers, who hadn't really had a lot of big wins either, have now come back to the pack. Although I will say, Big Ben, to me, in the last few games, even though he lost, he looked a little more like Big Ben, taking some hits, moving around in the pocket, throwing the ball down the field. He did not look like Big Ben to me the first, even though they were undefeated, and maybe that's the reason. But now, Connor's off the COVID list. That will help them. But I don't think anyone really saw the Steelers as the number one team in the AFC. But clearly, to me, the Chiefs, even though they've eked out a bunch of victories, I think they now have 4 wins in a row by one possession wins, if you will. And that strikes me as unusual for the Chiefs. But they have that guy, as you pointed out, the best football player in the world right now. And it doesn't matter. I saw his record now. It's a little, I don't like the way they did this, but I think his record in games that he's been at least 10 points behind is like 15-9 or something. And he's got the highest percentage. And they put up Brady, and he's like 36-50 or something. But I don't know that that's a real stat. But don't give it to me when you got 20 of those decisions. Give it to me when you got 80 of those decisions. And then we'll see what happens. But right now, early in his career, this guy is never out of it. I mean, and Brady for his career, no matter what his record is, you never thought he was out of it. And I don't know if that counts Super Bowls. Just saying. But maybe it does. Mahomes has one, but Brady has a bunch. So in any event, to me, unlike the NFC, the AFC, KC stands alone. You can talk about whoever you want for second. But I think right now it's the Chiefs to lose. And I think even though they look eminently beatable, and they have lost once, and they don't want to play the Raiders in the playoffs, assuming the Raiders can make the playoffs. I know you said they probably wouldn't want to play the Patriots, but even if the Patriots win out, I know they're still on the list, but I think even if they win out, it's going to be virtually impossible. So I have Chiefs way ahead at the top. Maybe you can discuss after the Chiefs who you like. But I think right now it's the Chiefs' Super Bowl appearance to lose vis-a-vis virtually anyone else, with the understanding that they haven't been as dominant as certainly I thought they would have been.
Yeah, really interesting stat you dug up there on Mahomes. And look, there's no way around it. That is incredible. I would like to say, I'd bet the NFL the past 5 to 10 years, whatever the NFL record is when teams are down by 10 points, has to be considerably better than what it was before 2010, whatever year you want to choose. Because just the way you pass the ball, teams can really come back. Brady started that trend in the Super Bowl. Legion of Boom, Seattle 10 points, Falcons 25 points. So, but no, that is an incredible stat. But team, just watching football once again. When people start comparing passing games, I'm sorry to get off on a little bit of a tangent. I'll quickly get back. It's not even comparing it to like the 70s, 80s anymore, which we should do. It's like comparing it to 2005. I think Brady led the league in passing yards in 2005 with like 4,100 passing yards. I think a majority of quarterbacks in the NFL this year are going to have more than 4,100 passing yards. It has changed so much, once again, yes, in the past 40 years, but also in the past 15. And we're going to have to contextualize that going forward if we're going to use stats as a way to judge. We already should do it if you're comparing Brady, Breeze to Namath, Montana, whoever. We're going to need to do it even more going forward. Apologies, that's an aside. But in terms of the AFC this year, I agree. Kansas City is the one team. It just feels like, though, there should be like more better teams, right, in the NFL, doesn't it? Maybe it always feels like that in the NFL because the league's built for parity. Maybe it's because New England's in decline. Some would argue Kansas City is starting to take that mantle. Still got a long ways to go, obviously. But yeah, Kansas City's 12-1. I can't remember the last time they didn't play a one-possession game. Like, it's been weeks. But with that guy with the ball in his hand, either to come from behind or to close it, you're going to like them. After Kansas City, it's tough because I think the trendy thing now is to just bash on the Steelers. I think people were waiting for it when they were undefeated because I think we were all in agreement that doesn't really seem like an 11-0 team. So I wouldn't bash on them too much yet because I just think the AFC has become, especially below Kansas City, pretty wide open. A team that I would really highlight is Buffalo. I think Buffalo is coming on really strong. I was hoping them to be a little bit better defensively, but Josh Allen continues his development. He should be a Pro Bowl quarterback. I think he's a top 3 quarterback in the AFC. I'm looking right now. He might be a top 2 quarterback in the AFC, right behind Patrick Mahomes. And he has some good weapons now. Last year was John Brown, but this year it's really Stephon Diggs is playing like one of the best receivers in football. And Cole Beasley, man. Cole Beasley is awesome. So I really like the Buffalo Bills. I think their defense will step up. I really like what McDermott's doing. I have a lot of respect for how they built their program the last 3-4 years in Buffalo, especially after seeing it for so long. And I think right now, if I'm going to pick a wild card team, I think the Bills are still, they made it to the wild card game. Josh Allen kind of lost his mind a little bit towards the end. I like him to go at least another round. If you tell me they get the Chiefs in round 2, do I think they'll beat the Chiefs? I don't necessarily think anyone's going to beat the Chiefs, but I think they can make it a close game, and maybe they'll make a play at the end. Another team I'm just going to highlight quickly would be Tennessee, just because I think they're so up and down that if they can get on a run like they did in the playoffs last year, and they're going to be better record-wise than they were last year, with Derrick Henry, who, once again, if you're talking about non-quarterback MVPs, that's almost a discussion now. You have your MVP and you have your non-quarterback MVP, because unfortunately it's very hard. And this could be true because the way the passing rules are to have a quarterback, to have an MVP who's not a quarterback. So to me, it's Henry or Aaron Donald, which way you want to go. And Derrick Henry is the best running back in football, and that team is built for January. They've just been so, to me, inconsistent. Like they blow out Buffalo after the COVID scare, and it's like, how does that happen? And they're just very up and down. But obviously, I'd highlight them as a team to watch. And then I just want to make a quick points on New England, if that's okay. Though I can save that until after you talk a little bit because I've been taking up some time. So why don't I turn it over to you? I'll save my New England thoughts for a couple minutes. Let it stew a little bit.
Well, I agree with you on the Bills. I think Josh Allen is an MVP candidate. I don't know if he can surpass Aaron Rodgers. It's almost like maybe like in baseball they give out an MVP for AFC, NFC, but they don't do that. But no, the Bills are a factor. McDermott's done a good job. You don't want to go to Buffalo and play them. I understand they'll probably have to go to Kansas City, but certainly cold weather is not going to bother them. They play in Buffalo. So I do like them. I do want to point out that the Steelers, and I don't know that they're related or not, but they lost Dupree, with that. I think it was an ACL, and he was a big part of what they were doing. And they had previously lost Devin Bush. I don't know if it was, I think it was very early in the season. They lost him for the season. And those two guys are incredible linebackers. So I think that hurts them a little. Again, to me, if I'm a Steelers fan, which I'm not, I'm looking at Big Ben the last few weeks, and he's starting to look like 32-year-old Big Ben, not 38-year-old Big Ben. And he's standing in a little more now, and he's taking some hits a little more now. He's throwing the ball down the field a little more now. Now, they didn't have Connor for a few weeks. He's back, so that can make them even tougher. But, yeah, nobody really thought, they were undefeated, they were undefeated, they were undefeated. Nobody thought they were. It was a little surprising, not shocking to you, that Washington beat them first. But, again, Washington, has been playing really well and having excellent defense. So, you're right. I think, frankly, that the Bills have moved into that number 2 spot over the Steelers. Not record-wise, but that could happen. We'll have to see what happens. So yeah, I have a couple things on the Patriots, but I'll let you go first, and then I only have one or two small things on them.
Sounds good. And I just want to say, and I love winter football. Like, I love January football, but I love to see it played in some level of elements.
In January.
Yeah. The NFC, you have Green Bay and you have a bunch of dome teams or teams in Florida. But in the AFC, Kansas City, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Cleveland, I don't think they'll have a home game. Tennessee, even an outdoor stadium in Nashville. I think, you're going to see some exciting January football if you're into that, which, not for the Super Bowl, but I am for a lot of the playoffs. Yeah, so New England, New England, the story of New England is, well, it's twofold. Well, it's more than twofold, but I'll just give 2 points. It's, could New England, excuse me, I'm a Patriot fan for those who don't know. Could New England have just gotten some weapons, man? Just like something at tight end, something at receiver. I actually think their front seven has come along okay. They did get gashed by the Rams, but they're missing Hightower and they're starting a bunch of young guys. I think their defense is actually coming along pretty well. And it's kind of where it's at now that I thought it had to be if they were going to do anything in the playoffs. But they just offensively, they just don't have enough. But we're still going to go back to a few games early on. I think they're still 3 and 4 in one possession games, where if they just won one of those, they'd have a really good shot at making it. Right now, they need to win out. Even if they do win out, I actually think they can catch Miami and Las Vegas based on those remaining schedules. New England has a tiebreaker over everyone they're chasing. But I think they can, well, the top 3 teams they're chasing. But Baltimore needs to lose 2 out of the next 3. I think they play Jacksonville next week, the Giants, and the Bengals. So that's not going to happen. So New England, if the Browns beat them, and that was one of the best games of the year, give Cleveland a lot of credit, too. It's exciting to see. We talked about Buffalo turning it around. Cleveland turning it around is just as, if not more, exciting for fans there. But no, New England, they're going to have to figure out this offseason. I think they're going to play this weekend in Miami. I think they have a good chance to win that game, to be honest. Miami did play Kansas City well. You look at who Miami's beat. They've beaten almost nobody. They got the Rams when they weren't playing that well. Other than that, literally look at the schedule. They haven't beaten anyone. I give Flores all the credit in the world what he's done, but I like New England this weekend. So I think they could still theoretically finish 9-7. I just don't think they're going to get there. Belichick's going to have to decide, what direction do they go in this offseason. They still have a couple of older guys who are in a win-now mode. What do you do at quarterback? It's going to be tough. I'm afraid they're going to be in this in-between where they could be a mediocre team for a couple of years. And that's almost like the worst position you want to be in. You don't want to be losing forever. But that's a kind of weird position to be in. So I've really liked Cam in a lot of ways, but I just don't think he has it as an NFL quarterback. I'm not even totally averse to giving him another shot if they feel like they can't get their guy in free agency or the draft. But if they can get that guy, they need to get him. Or they need to, they need to put weapons around him, because I'm sorry, they have arguably the worst receiving core in football, even though Damiere Byrd and Jacoby Myers have come along pretty well. Those guys are 3 and 4 guys at best. And they have the worst group of tight ends in the National Football League. Once again, Cam's not throwing it good, but nobody's going to throw it good on that team. Seriously, Steve, I don't care who you put there. So a little bit disappointing. I like the way New England battled, throughout the year, but looks like they're going to come up short.
Well, a few things. We should point out Hightower was a COVID opt-out and a big loss. As was Patrick Chung, by the way. I know their secondary is real good, but, he's a big-time defender in the back end as well. I just find this week interesting because it's Belichick against a young quarterback. Everybody is singing the praises of Tua as a really intelligent guy. He's had a couple of rough games so far, in my opinion, and somehow, Belichick dials it up. I don't know what the record is. You might, it's ridiculous, Belichick against rookie quarterbacks. And so I agree with you on the Patriots. Edelman finally practiced this week. I don't know if that means he's going to play. Talk about weapons. He'd be the one that they maybe had, but now didn't have for a bunch of weeks. I think it's a woulda, coulda, shoulda kind of been year, frankly. But I do think, in my opinion, it's one of Belichick's greatest coaching jobs. You talk, can a team be 8-8 and have a coach do a great coaching job? I think this would be the proof if they wound up 8-8. This would be the proof of a coach doing a great coaching job. I understand nobody cares. It's the Patriots. They're not going to make the playoffs. Screw them. Belichick says, a barrage of riches for years and years and years. But I really think when you look at some of these games, and I always go back to that Chiefs game with Brian Hoyer, where it was very close for 3 quarters, and I think they could have won if Hoyer didn't lose his mind, which, Hoyer's not supposed to lose his mind. But I think this is an example of a great coaching job, and I'm already reading, like after week 1, when it was like Patriots 1, Brady nothing because they lost to the Saints. I'm now reading, oh, look at this, the Patriots aren't going to make the playoffs, and Brady is. But if you watch the Patriots and see what they showed up with offensively, and I agree, to me, Cam Newton, to me, he can't sling it. Maybe I overrated his slinging it in the past, but he can't really throw it. And it looks to me like he's heaving the ball when he has to throw it 30, 40 yards, never mind 60 yards. He can't reach the end zone on a 60-yard Hail Mary. As you said, maybe put Stidham in. But it looks like Belichick thinks that Stidham is not the answer. I don't know if they lose to Miami, if he starts him 2 games to see what he's about. I don't know if he's going to do that.
They should. Yeah.
No, I don't know. But this week, it's Belichick against the Belichick guy, Flores, and it's Belichick against a rookie quarterback. And just as I told you, I really like Belichick against the Chargers. And Herbert's been great. He's been better than Tua. He's setting records for 300-yard games for a rookie. Obviously, I don't think it would be 45-0, but Belichick schemes out these rookie quarterbacks, and they might get him the next time, but I don't think they're going to get him this time. And again, Tua to me has been good, but not great. And so we'll see. It's an interesting game. I'd like to see the Patriots wind up the winning record because I'll say it again. I think this is one of Belichick's best coaching jobs, even though nobody cares.
Yeah, the only couple things I'll add to that, I do think if they lose to Miami, I would actually be in favor of them playing Stidham, but it's clear they're not huge on Stidham. So if you lose to Miami, actually, potentially you could beat Miami and more or less be eliminated this week. But you might as well see what you have. A lot of people are calling for it this week. I think go out, try and win this game. Cam's deserved it. He's clearly the leader in that locker room. He's clearly earned the right to be the starting quarterback. Stidham, Belichick doesn't hesitate to start, young quarterbacks like we saw this 20 years ago when it was a much more controversial decision than this would be. So that's not the problem. The last thing I'll say is I think Belichick, I agree with you on the coaching performance. He is, it further proves that he is undoubtedly the greatest coach in the history of football. The problem is where does Belichick, the GM, start ranking? And I think this is really going to be the question going forward. I think he is one of the greatest GMs in the history of football, obviously, when you look at the record. But you look at draft picks, people aren't coming to New England to take discounts anymore. That's not happening. And you don't have the greatest quarterback of all time willing to be paid the 22nd quarterback in the league. So, Brady gave him a lot of flexibility on free agency. The draft has been a mixed bag, especially, the wide receiver position is embarrassing. Belichick's by far the greatest coach of all time. We're going to see over these next few years where he ranks in terms of GM because, he's starting to get some critique for it. I'd say give him a couple years. The guy's earned it. But that's going to be the question in a way going forward when thinking about his legacy. It's greatest coach of all time, excellent GM, but where does it go from here from the sort of personnel standpoint?
Excellent points, Johnny. This is Steve Kallas along with Johnnie Kallas. Speaking of sports, we'll see you the next time.